May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC Booba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, preserving the legacy of Shindo Suzuki and those whose paths crossed his. And anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Shindo Gita Gayatri. And Gita, I call her. Shindo is her Zen name. She and I know each other from Tassajara and from India, and you will hear all about that. And if you want to know more about her, just go to cuke.com, cuke.com, and write Gita Gayatri, Gayatri, or Shindo, Shindo, Shindo Gita Gayatri. And I just write Gayatri, and it'll go to her page. And then there's a link there to her website, Symphony of Values, which she talks about a little. She explains the origin of it, and that I didn't realize in the podcast. And here it says about Shindo. Shindo is a Zen priest and student of life. Her practice is focused on understanding the science of life through Indian philosophy, Buddhist psychology, living through the discipline and aesthetic of Zen, and healing through the practice of Ayurveda. Okay. Now you'll hear us talking about the ashram group she's been involved with and the founding teacher. I call it, I should have brought this up. Broadly speaking, this type of Hinduism or this type of practice is Advaita Vedanta. Here in Bali, they call it Advaita. Advaita Vedanta. Most people here don't know, but it's sort of the Zen of what we loosely call Hinduism, which he talks about. Well, there really isn't any Hinduism as a religion. And yeah, it's a giant basket. But, Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta, Punjaji, so many great teachers. And then the Western teachers that have followed in this vein, like Muji, I see them as Advaita Vedanta. And Advaita means non-dual. So, I wanted to say one thing about Shaukat, who Gita traveled with, and she was with him. And when I was there in Tiruvannamalai, he's a really great guy. He has a nice big beard, and he's a poet from Kerala. And quite a fine person. Anyway, so look, after our pause to meditate, we'll give Gita a call, okay? So when you hear the bell, hit pause if you're of such a mind, and meditate or whatever for as long as you want. And when you're through, hit unpause, and we'll be there to hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever, and we'll give Gita a call.
Hello.
Hello, Gita. So, how you doing?
Good. We're in the practice period right now at Green Gulch.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, at City Center and Sahara as well.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
You and I met. What you do you remember what year it was? We met at Sahara.
Yeah, that was maybe I think 2005.
Right. And then I learned you said you were from Kerala.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, oh wow, I'm dying to go to Kerala. Tell me about it. I
Yeah, you were doing dishes.
right. So, um, you know what a way-seeking mind story is?
Yeah, way-seeking mind. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's your way-seeking mind story goes way back.
Mm-hmm.
What led you to be involved in spiritual practice? You were in India and then in America. Where would you put it back to? Where do you want to start telling about that? I want to hear that.
Okay. Um, in India, I was, like I met my teacher, my spiritual father, I can say, when I was 3 years old. And he was kind of the center of my life.
Mm.
And so, everything I did and whatever happened in my life, he was my guide and mentor. And at that time, my spiritual teacher, that is my grandfather, spiritual grandfather, was also alive. And so whenever the teachers came home, I did not have to go to school. I could hang out with them and go to the talks that they were giving. And I was very little at that time. So, and, when they were taking a train or a flight, they had to come from the mountains where they stayed in Blue Mountains to the plains. And then they would stay in my parents' house. And so I always accompanied them every time that they were there. So that was the beginning of my spiritual journey.
What are their names?
My teacher's teacher was Natraja Guru. He was directly a student with Narayana Guru. Narayana Guru is very popular in Kerala. Every little town has his picture, and they really study his teachings because his teachings were very diverse and very unique. And it also had the teachings of, like it contains the teachings of the Buddha as well. So it had so that was very, like he kind of condensed Indian philosophy into 10 different darshanas. And because Indian philosophy is so vast, it takes more than a lifetime to even get anywhere into it. So, I mean, he kind of condensed it, and it's much easier for us to study Indian philosophy through his teachings. Like Dogen, he's written several works which contains all of these texts. And so he was Narayana Guru, and my teacher's teacher studied with him, and he was sent to Sorbonne for further studies by Narayana Guru. Narayana Guru personally collected funds to send this student of his to Sorbonne for further studies. He was young at that time, and then he went to Sorbonne, and he did a study on education, and his thesis was on the personal factor in education. and he was asked to present that in French. So he learned French language, and he did that. And at that time, Henry Bergson was alive, and he very much appreciated his thesis, and he studied with Henry Bergson as well. So
who's Henry Bergson?
Henry Bergson was a philosopher of that time,
Hmm.
in that era, and he was in that area where he lived and worked.
Where did Henry Bergson come from?
He's probably from Europe. I mean, Wikipedia will know more about him.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Yeah. So,
And then your teacher, what was his name?
My teacher was Nitya Chaitanya Yati.
Mm.
So he studied actually, first he started to study with the person called Dr. Mies. Dr. Mies was a Dutch scholar who lived in India, and he started the Kanva Ashram. The Kanva Ashram, which also had a branch in Tiruvannamalai, if you remember. You stayed close to the Kanva Ashram.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Dr. Mies had founded the Kanva Ashram, and my teacher worked with him when he was doing his magnum opus called Revelations in the Wilderness, and he was the person who typed it all out for him and worked with him. So, both these teachers had some Western background. So throughout my growing years, I was, hearing all kinds of Western names about the father of philosophy, Aristotle and Plato and Beethoven and Bach and, Anna Eisner in literature to philosophy to, they did not see anything as separate from spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything was included, like poetry, literature, music. Like a musician would be like a practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
That's how Indian philosophy sees art.
Mm.
Like the more you give time to something, like the word for kala is the word for time, and the word for art is kala, similar word. So the more one gives time that something becomes an art. So for all the 64 different arts are considered as part of spiritual living.
Mm. Mm.
And the person becomes a practitioner. So, yeah, it's done with devotion, dedication. Whether the person is an architect or a dancer or a musician or an Ayurvedic practitioner, all were considered spiritual.
Mm.
Even martial art.
Mm.
And then I just happened to come here to Zen Center, and your book actually, somebody brought Crooked Cucumber and put it in our library.
Now, wait a minute.
And
when you say our library, you were living in an ashram, right?
Yes. After my teacher died, he died in 1999. And then I started staying in the foothills of the Blue Mountains in a place that he asked me to buy. And I did not know why he asked me to buy this land, and I did not have money at that time. And I was married to a military person, and I was living a married life. I had my children, 2 boys, and then he asked me at that time. I was with him when somebody took him to this land, and he said, "Do you want to buy land here?" And I said, "I'm not looking for land. Why do you say so?" And he said, "I'm so glad that your feet have touched this land." And I didn't understand what he was saying. And I said, I have no money to buy land here because I don't consider using my ex-husband's money for buying something that I don't even know what reason and things like that. So, um, so he gave me a 1 rupee coin and he said, don't spend it, keep it. And I kept it. And somehow within it was just coincidentally my father had sold some property, and then I received some money in the mail, which he divided among his children. And I said to my teacher, I said, okay, I have money now. What do you want me to do? He said, go ahead and buy that land, which I did. I bought some, I think, 4 plots there and started. I didn't know why I was buying this land, and it was a dry land with no water. There's no groundwater, and it's a rain shadow area. And I just went ahead and bought the land. And many other friends bought land around it through the teacher. And so when my teacher died, I thought I could not go back to my family life. For some reason, it felt like a rug was pulled up from under my feet. And I just felt like traveling. I was always moving on a moving bus or a moving train or walking, or I was kind of grieving by moving. And then, I was never in one place for more than 10 days. I was constantly traveling for several years. And one of my travels brought me here.
Were you traveling with Shaukath?
Yes. When I was, after our teacher died, Shaukat was also in the same temple with the same teacher. And we all had to say to the next person in charge about how we want to relate with the temple in the future. And then I said I wanted to travel to the Himalayas. And Shaukat had the same intention, but he could not speak the English language or even Hindi. He only knew Malayalam, the language of Kerala. So he just told me that let's travel together. And I was not intending to travel with him or anyone. But then I realized that it's not safe for a woman to travel alone.
That's right.
In India.
Yeah.
Yes. So I said, let's see what happens. And if it happens, Kesarasara, we'll maybe travel together. I don't know. But it happened that we ended up traveling together. And we traveled, for 6 years.
Yeah. And as I remember you telling me when we met, you decided to take one book with you.
Yes. That was during every year we would travel to the Himalayas. And somehow before going to the Himalayas, we always found ourselves in Tiruvannamalai, in Arunachala. And then we would go to the Himalayas, because my teacher had a very strong connection with Ramana Maharshi when he was alive. He used to visit Maharshi. And he also took his renunciation in the presence of Ramana Maharshi. So he has a strong connection. Yeah.
Oh.
So that, Tiruvannamalai has been our strong connecting place as well. And so when we were traveling to the Himalayas every year we would travel to the Himalayas, and it usually closes during the winter. So during one of our travels, Shaukat said, you usually carry books to read, and that's the heaviest part of our luggage. So can you this time carry just one book to read? And so because he was always chivalrous and he always offered to carry the heavy bags. So he requested if I could just take one book, and he went up to the shelf and just pick the thickest book there. And that happened to be Crooked Cucumber. And, I looked at it and I saw the bald head of a Zen teacher. And, I said, I'm not looking at Zen, or I was wondering, why would I want to know the story of a Zen master? I'm not even thinking of Zen. And I said, okay. And I just took the book, and finally I found myself reading it cover to cover. And, that's how I read the book. Throughout it was a 3-month-long travel, and this was my companion that went with me and seemed to impact me in somewhere. It hit me at a deeper level that I did not know.
I want to ask you, how did this lead to coming to America? But also another thing I wanted to say was that your, would you call it your ashram, the place that you bought and built the buildings on at your teacher's request? But that was like one of a number of them. He had ashrams like in, I can't remember the names.
Varkala.
Yeah, Berkeley. I stayed there. That was the head ashram. I enjoyed that very much. And the teacher there was your teacher's successor. And he gave me a couple of books he'd done. One of them I really enjoyed, about him teaching Hinduism to a young boy in Fiji, explaining the importance of the Upanishads. It was basically explaining the Upanishads and how that's the core teaching of Hinduism. I really enjoyed that. So, so you were involved actually with this whole ashram group, right?
Yes.
So how did you decide to come to America? How did that work out?
So coincidentally, when we returned from the Himalayas, my niece, who used to at that time live in San Jose, and her sister lived in LA, and so the one who lived in San Jose called me, and she said that she had just delivered a daughter, and she was asking for a name, to suggest a name for her daughter. And in the course of conversation, I had just read this book, and Tassajara and San Francisco. Somehow San Francisco and Tassajara just stayed in my mind, and I wasn't thinking of the United States in any way. And then after reading this book, it was something was there lingering in my mind, and I told her, maybe I'll come to see your daughter. And my brother, elder brother, sponsored my visit to the U.S. because I could not really afford, because after I broke my marriage and started living on my own, I was not financially stable. And then I came to the U.S. to visit my nieces, and I had family in North Carolina as well, so I visited them, and also in Manhattan. So I came to visit, and I took the Amtrak from LA to San Francisco, which was a 9-hour journey. There was some bomb scare or something, and we ended up being on the Amtrak for 9 hours. And there was a Franciscan nun who was sitting next to me, and I really enjoyed the ride, because enjoyed the conversation with her. And I always had Saint Francis of Assisi was like very close to my heart, and coming to San Francisco was like, for me, really beautiful experience. And then with this Franciscan nun sitting next to me and talking about St. Francis through the journey, it was very, very connecting for me.
Oh.
And then I, visited City Center in San Francisco because I'd read about it. And I think Victoria Austin was the director at that time, and I'd emailed her and asked her if I could visit and see the place. And she was very welcoming, and I stayed there for 3 days. And Mick, the baker from Green Gulch, had come there to deliver bread. And he said, "Do you want to go to Green Gulch and I can drive you there?" And I said, "Yes." And I came to Green Gulch. And I actually met all the teachers of Zen Center. I met, Michael Wenger, Tenshin Roshi, and all the teachers at that time except for Paul, who was at Ireland at that time. So, and then, and then I returned back. Michael Wenger gave me a lot of books that were published through the Zen Center. And I met Paul Haller's Jisha, who was Catherine Shields. And she kept saying, "You have to meet my teacher." And I said, "I'm not looking for a teacher. I had a teacher, and now I only have to live the teaching. And I have to figure it out, through my life." And she kept saying, "This is what my teacher looks like." She showed me his picture. She was very insistent. And then when I was leaving City Center, she gave me the chant book. She went to the Buddha Hall and picked a chant book, and she said, "Take this with you." And I took that with me and returned back to India. But when I was flying out of San Francisco, I had this vague feeling that this is home and I will come back. And I didn't know for what. And then I went back to India. And suddenly, out of the blue, I get a call one night from Paul Haller, who was the abbot at that time.
Wow.
And he said, he called me on, I had a small little broken cell phone, and I was living in Karamadai. That's the place, it's a wilderness place, you've been there. So it's the middle of nowhere. And, I was surprised to get a call in the middle of the night. It was 12. Past 12 maybe, and people were sleeping inside. And then I stepped outside to speak to him, and as I was talking to him, all the dogs started to bark because it's very unusual for someone to be sitting out at that time talking. So he said, "Oh, you have so many dogs." I said, "Yeah, these are the stray dogs in the neighborhood and our dog. Many dogs were barking." And then we had an hour-long conversation, and he called me again the next day, and he invited me to Tassajara. He said, would you like to come for a practice period that I'm going to be leading? And he said he could offer me a scholarship, and I didn't have to pay. And at that time, Shaukat and I were going to Vasudhara. Vasudhara in the Himalayas is a sacred pilgrimage place, and we had to walk over the glaciers at that time. So the glacier that we are walking on may not be there when you return. So, so I said, if I return safe, I will definitely consider. And then we traveled to Vasudhara, and then we returned back safe. And then I had to make money for getting my ticket. So we had an old car and that my family had given me because we had to drive water from the village. We did not have water or a sump or anything there at that time. So we would drive to the village to bring water or bike to the village to bring water, carry pots and pans to the village and fill it up and bring it. So we had a car. And at that time we had just, what do you call it? Like we did up the car, changed the engine and everything. And then a friend of ours offered to buy the car. And then we sold the car, and I got money to get my ticket to come here.
Mm.
And I reached city center 2 days before the practice period, and
Wow.
Wendy Lewis was the director.
Mm.
And she said, I had just my Indian clothes, and she said, "Are you going to Tassajara like this?" She said, "No, you need woolens." And she made a work circle announcement, and people were so good, and I got everything from a cap from Anapon and Jubon, and like rain shoes and raincoat and woolens, and then I went to Tassajara, and outside my cabin somebody had left a robe which was my size, which just appeared. I don't know, I still don't know till today who left that, but there was a robe of my size, and it was. And then Paul Haller said, "Are you going to stay for 3 months? You're a wandering person." So I said, "I don't know." I said, but when I started the practice, I just felt deeply connected, and it became a long relationship with Zen Center.
Mm. That's very nice of him to say that. Usually we say you have to stay for 3 months, so don't come. You have to commit.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Yeah. I used to, at Tassajara, when people would come and they'd want to be there, I said, okay, but you got to commit to something. At least 3 days. You hate it, you stay for 3 days, and or whatever it was. Huh. So, obviously, Paul was interested in you. You must have made an awfully good impression when you came the first time.
I did not meet him, actually, and I've not asked him till today why he called and what was the reason behind.
Well, it's because you met other people, and they told him. You said he was you were relating to his Jisha, his assistant.
Yes.
So that's where he got it.
Jisha must have.
Yeah, she probably told him, "Hey, I met this wonderful woman from India, and she's really got a strong way-seeking mind. She's already done her what do you have to be in the city for 2 years before you go to Tassajara or something, or at Green Gulch?"
Yes. Now yes. I didn't know at that time that was the rule, or I was just going with what was happening. Later, I came to know that the rules to go to Tassajara.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good call.
But somehow till today, I don't feel that that I'm living in the United States because I don't know the United States. I only know Zen Center, San Francisco Zen Center, because I've only lived at Tassajara City Center and Green Gulch, which feels for me like home.
Did you go to North Carolina to see your relatives there?
I did. I did visit my family in North Carolina and also in Manhattan. And I have a family in Minnesota, which I've not visited.
Oh, really? That's something. It's great you got to Manhattan. That's a trip.
Yes, my cousin used to live there, and her children live in Manhattan.
Yeah. That's where Katrinka was born.
Katrinka was born in Manhattan?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice. Now I can connect. Okay.
So you were at Tassajara for that practice period, and I met you in the summer when I was there, for 10 days washing dishes. So you stayed.
That's right. I was amazed, when I heard someone mention that you were David Chadwick, and I was like, oh, really? Because I just read your book, and that was the book that made the impression, and and then I was, right there bringing my dishes to the dish area, and you were washing dishes, and then you made conversation, and we talked briefly, and I was like, wow. I was very impressed.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I miss that. I'd love to go back and wash dishes again there in the summer. So what happened after that? After then. So you were there the practice period. You were in the summer. What happened then?
I was there, and then Zen Center. I decided to stay. I was on a visit visa, and then they converted it to a student visa, which is a M1 visa, because I liked the practice and I could connect with the practice. Because, with my teacher in India, living with the teacher was the teaching. He was, I can say, like my first Zen master, because I got the feel of living with a Zen master with my life with my teacher. And then I learned Indian philosophy by living with him, which was more like, after he died, I realized it was more like a theory, like a theory of knowledge, knowing it all in the mind. And there was no more a practice there in the temple. The person that was living there was practicing by himself, and he preferred to be alone. He's a scholarly person, and he just lives by himself and practices by himself, and he prefers to be on his own. And then there's also a Japanese woman who lives in the temple, and she also prefers to practice by herself. And so there was no group practice, Sangha practice. People were slowly, nobody was there almost. And here I found we were living the practice, and my master coined this beautiful name called, he said, Symphony of Values. He called it practice as a symphony of values, like how higher values are connected through practicing together. And that's what we call our temple in the place without water, the Karamadai place. We call it as Symphony of Values. We don't call it as an ashram, because ashram in India comes with a baggage, with an idea of what an ashram has to be like.
Yeah.
And we don't confine to those rules, maybe, I don't know, but we don't call it an ashram. We call it as Symphony of Values, and we call it as Nityanjali, which is Nitya means eternal, and Anjali means offering. So eternal offering, Symphony of Values. Yeah. So I found that kind of a life that is being lived here in Zen Center, San Francisco Zen Center, had been living the life that we'd been dreaming of, for 60 years, since, Suzuki Roshi's days and starting the practice here. So it was very connecting for me, and it was more like an application of that theory of knowledge that I received from my teachers since childhood. So then I could apply it to my own personal connection to spiritual living, engaged practice.
So, did you? So, how long did you stay? Because I know you went back to India some.
Yes, I went back to India, and somehow Paul Haller, who was my teacher for 16 years, he had a way of bringing me back again and again. Like once I went back to India, I would forget about Zen Center. Zen Center is no longer on my mind anymore. I'm connected with, because I have a full life in India as well.
Yeah.
So I get involved with my life in India, and life in India is kind of pretty passive in some ways, and it's like whatever's to be will be, and then I'm not really pushing to go anywhere. I'm quite content with my life there, and I just continue to live there.
Mm.
And Paul Haller has been, he became my mentor, and he started pushing me from India, and every time bringing me back to Zen Center again and again, to Tassajara mainly. And then he visited India, and with a whole lot of his students, and we tried to do Zen in India, in Tiruvannamalai, which had a different flavor. And
where did you practice there?
Over the years, then I ended up buying land in Tiruvannamalai.
Mm-hmm.
There was some family property that was sold or something, and I got a little money, and I invested in buying a small piece of land in Tiruvannamalai, because that was another place that we kept going, and that was like a sacred spot for people from all over the world who came to experience the mountain Arunachala, and how silence comes to people naturally by just being there, even though it's a noisy town.
Every town in India is noisy.
Yeah. It is a small, noisy town. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember this piece. You either bought it or you were starting to develop it when I was there.
I think when you were there, we were probably still looking for land, and I think I was staying with the German lady, Heike.
Yeah.
And
nice place.
So
you were staying in a nice place.
Yeah. Yes,
but you showed me this land. It wasn't that far from Ramana Ashram.
Yes.
And as I recall, it was sort of coming together in some way about the time I was leaving, and I gave you whatever I'd had in my apartment, a refrigerator, I remember that, and a mixer of sorts.
And some furniture.
Yeah, some furniture. Because when Katrinka and I arrived there, you remember she was there the first month. You were so helpful. You found me this wonderful little apartment, like 5-minute walk from the Ramana Ashram, and then you and she went out shopping and got all this stuff and brought it back there. Set me up, and you were so helpful to me there. And when Clay arrived to visit, you were helpful then too. I really wanted him to meet you. I saw that. I thought, oh, Clay will now he can be with a wise woman who will help to elevate him. That's the way I saw it.
But sweetheart. Clay is so adorable. I remember him at Tassajara.
Yeah.
Doing music in the walk-in. The Tassajara in the summer is so hot. And Clay would be there with other young people, and they would turn a bucket upside down and keep drumming on it, doing music which was soundproof inside the walk-in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember him so well.
I wanna remind you how I happened to come in contact with you in India then, because it was another coincidence, really, because I decided I had been. Do you remember there was? If this is after your time, but there was a very early student of Suzuki Roshi's named Claude Ananda Dallenberg. And I was visiting him like once a week in a convalescent home. And he'd had a stroke. And actually, I helped get him to the home. I helped get him to the hospital when he had his stroke. And I'd go to him every week and read. And then I was with him, when he died. And then our favorite book to read, I mean, I read him all sorts of stuff, Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And he didn't want to hear any Zen. He'd heard enough Zen. He was more into Jodo Shinshu. And he always had been both Jodo Shinshu and Zen and Quaker. He liked Quakers. But anyway, the David Godman's book on Ramana Maharshi, I read 2 times, and we both loved it. So Claude had died, and my mother sent me some money from something she had received. She sent my sister and me. And then I never thought of saving money back then. I didn't start thinking of saving money until, really until I was 65 or something. I said, let's all go to India, because I've been there in 2003 in the north for 3 months, and I really enjoyed it. What a trip. And and they said, well, where do you want to go? And I said, let's go to this mountain. It's on this, where Ramana Maharshi was. I had no idea what was there. No idea at all. I didn't know where it was. It was just, it was something that was mentioned in the book. It was a holy mountain and all that. I said, so I was drawn to the mountain. So then I'm in Santa Fe, and with Dan Welsh, and we're going to the home of his very close friend, and for many years his partner, KC, and beautiful giant home with full of,
Her Indian name is Sahaya.
Oh, Sahaya, right. And we're going through the home, and she has all this Indian art and everything. I mean, both types of Indian art, American India and India. And then I saw a picture of Arunachala. And I said, oh, there's that mountain. We're going to go there. And she said, I have a home there. And when are you going? And I told her, and she said, oh, I'll be there then. And then I write you, and I tell you, hey, Gita, I'm going to go to India. I want to go to Arunachala. You know where that is or anything about it? You said, that's where I live. So all of a sudden I know 2 people, and I find out it was like the perfect place to go. So that was wonderful. And then you and I gave a presentation at Zen Center sort of on Arunachala, and I mean, you're the one who knows about it, but on our experience.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yes.
And one other thing I want to say, and then I got to meet David Godman, who hangs out at the Ramana Ashram. Wow.
Yes.
And there was a Christian brother living in the ashram who was from Kamaldali, which has a relationship with Tatsahara.
Kamaldali.
Yeah, it's over in Big Sur.
Yes. Cyprian.
Huh?
He's now the abbot of New Kamaldoli. He was a good friend with Michael Heiberger. Michael Heiberger was a monk who lived at New Kamaldoli, and he came to visit India for 10 days, and then he ended up staying at Ramana Ashram for 10 years, and he still lives there, and he's the editor in Ramana Ashram, and Michael Heiberger. And Father Cyprian is a musician and a very good friend with Michael, so he visits Ramana Ashram every year. So
Mm.
he's now the abbot of New Kamaldoli.
Mm.
So yeah, he comes every year. Did you meet him or you met Michael?
I met both of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I met some really wonderful people through you. I don't remember any names. That architect,
Mm-hmm.
and went going to his place, and I don't know. I just loved it, and you really made it. You've been at Zen Center now for 16 years.
Yeah, yeah. Since I'm pretty bad at math, since 2005, I don't know how many years that is.
16.
So I mean, yeah. So the last time I went, I was Shuso with Paul in 2016.
Mm.
I got ordained in 2009, and then I became Shuso in 2016. And then I returned back to India after being Shuso, and somehow after being Shuso, after the Shuso ceremony the next day, strangely I felt that I want to study with Reb Anderson. So for some reason I had this deep desire to study with Reb Anderson.
Mm.
And then I came to Green Gulch, and I talked to Paul about it, and he said, go and meet him and check with him if he's willing to teach you. And then I came to Green Gulch, and before I left to India, and I met Reb Anderson, I asked him if he would be willing to teach me, and he said yes. And then I had to go back because I was on a visiting visa at that time, and he gave me the third turning of the wheel. One of his that was newly published at that time, and he gave that book to me, and he said, study this, the Samdhinir Mochana Sutra, and I took it, but I never read it in India or studied it in India. So I made that connection and went back to India, and then of course Zen Center worked another religious worker visa for me, and I've been on several visas over the years, and then I came to be Eno at Tassajara, and then Paul Haller was there, and he was leading a practice period, and then I, it takes a lot of time for all that paperwork, so to get on to some visa, and we had very good support in the immigration office that worked with Zen Center, and then I came to Tassajara on paper to be Eno, and that was when COVID hit, and
Oh, yeah.
And then we had the fire, like the California fires, and we were evacuated from Tassajara. And somehow when I came for the practice period, I was actually studying the Samdhinir Mochana Sutra with the Shuso at Catherine was the Shuso there at that time, Catherine Spate. And she and I would study the Samdhinir Mochana on personal days. And we would call Tenshin Roshi, Reb Anderson on the phone and ask him questions, any doubts and all that. And then COVID hit, and then the fires came to Tassajara. And when the fires came, we were all evacuated. We were asked to leave, and we could choose whether to go to City Center or Green Gulch. And of course, I chose to come to Green Gulch because Tenshin Roshi lives here. And then I found that I never returned back to Tassajara. I started practicing with him and studying with him, and now he's my teacher, even though Paul is still my primary teacher.
That's good. That's good. That's that's quite a path you've been on. So, what are you doing at Green Gulch now? What's your position?
At Green Gulch now, I'm Fukutan.
The assistant cook. Yeah, nice kitchen. I used to live above it. Or with her. If you go up the stairs from.
About what?
If you go up the stairs from. Come right outside the kitchen, you go up the stairs where the library is. There's a little room there. That's where my son Kelly was born, in that room.
In the Wheelwright Center?
No, directly upstairs from the dining room and kitchen.
Oh, really? I mean, which is now the student lounge.
Yeah, it became a student lounge long ago.
I see.
Yeah,
I see.
Yeah, Dia, who was Diane then, and I lived there, half a year, and I built the place, back in the Ken Sawyer and I built places back in the valley out of bullpens at the very end of Spring Valley, maybe you call it, the upper garden, or you go past Reb's home and there.
Yes.
And so I loved living there, right in the center of the action. And then I went back and lived in that room in 85 and 86. I love it. It's a great room. Where do you live?
I live by Spring Valley. You cross the bridge and the first, it's called the Airstream. It's on the right as you cross the stream. It's kind of diagonally opposite where Linda cuts lives. And Red.
Yeah, that's been there a long time. Jerry Fuller lived there.
Yeah, the Airstream. That little cabin.
Yeah. So, do you see anything in the future, or it's just one day at a time, or what?
Yeah, I don't know, because I really feel. And then I started studying Ayurveda, which is because of COVID, and being here. I found this California College of Ayurveda, which is in Nevada City. And they had online classes, and I enrolled with them for a 9-month program. And I started studying Ayurveda, which ends in January this year. Next month is my last class. It's like a weekend class once a month online, and that was very, very connecting for me, because I have this background of Indian philosophy, and then I did Zen, and the Zen is more like a body-mind practice, and Ayurveda gives the science of that in such a beautiful, detailed way, and it was just so connecting for me, and I thought. And so now that seems to be like where I'm taking my practice. When you start practicing, you're just practicing for yourself and fine-tuning your own self. But then when it comes to sharing it with others, you need to have the words. And to study the words, I came to Tenshin Roshi, because, I found that I just don't know anything after practicing so many years. When it comes to talking about practice, I felt a lack there. I didn't know anything. And so studying that with Tenshin Roshi, he's just amazing. He teaches us how to ask questions. We're studying the precepts with him. He does a Shuso group every week. On Sundays we meet, and online with people, all of his students all over. And he likes to be questioned, and he's teaching us to question, which is like giving me the voice to speak, to learn how to ask questions and learn how to see things. So I'm really learning a lot with him, and then to take the practice into a realm which is familiar to me. I find Ayurveda is very connecting, and it's giving me the science of the body and the mind, and and the the functioning of the human being in the universe, and it's so connecting to the Zen practice. So I feel, and they still have 2 more programs, which I think in the future I would be doing both those programs, and then I'll see where life takes me. So that's my future plan.
You may become an Ayurvedic practitioner.
The course that I did now is like Ayurvedic counselor. So it feels connecting, but I don't know where life takes me, because I kind of signals that that life puts in front of me. So sometimes, choicelessly, I just go with where I'm taken. So, but this is my intention. If that works, then I would maybe come back. But my visa ends in July, and Zen Center may extend it for another 2.5 years. I don't know. With immigration, it's very uncertain. It's not like not just immigration. I think life itself is not very predictable. So yeah. So yes, and that is the plan. I may be going to India soon. Early next year sometime, and then I have this connection with my ashram there in India still, which is like my childhood home,
Yeah.
So when I'm in India, I'm in Fern Hill in Ooty, and taking care of that temple as well with my Dharma brother Vyasa Prasad.
Wait a minute. Ooty, is that the one in the hill, up at the top with the toy train, the small train?
Yes, the Blue Mountains, Nilgiri Hills in Ooty.
I loved it there. I loved it. And you know what? When I arrived there, I went there from your Symphony of Values place. And when I arrived there, first thing they did was give me a sweater. Because it's way up there. And it was so wonderful being there. I loved it. And then I took don't they call it the toy train?
Yes, they call it the toy train, the train that goes up the mountain through the woods.
Oh, wow. That was neat. And all these monkeys going down the train to the town below. I remember that Ooty was having a problem with water buffalo coming in and destroying crops.
Buffalo, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they have these bisons, which is they're kind of coexisting with the bison right now, because the bisons come in big herds, and because there is not much people activity there, it's kind of like a quiet place where they feel at home, and they just come in big herds, and the gate is never locked, so they can always come through the main gate,
Wow.
Yeah, and the person who lives there, Swami Vyasa Prasad, he's learned to coexist with them, so he doesn't mind them being there.
Oh, well, that's really different from when I was there. They were trying to figure out how to protect the place from them, but you'd really need steel. You'd need serious steel fences for them.
Yes, we did the fencing since then. Yes, there was the fencing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if in your travels, like when you go to India, I think you're closer to us here when you're in India, and we've talked about this before. Please come visit us here. I haven't left here since I arrived 8 years ago. I mean, I've gone to Kuala Lumpur and Singapore a little for visa stuff. That's it. Oh no, when we first got here, we went to Thailand and Japan for a few months, because we were checking Asia out, but then we decided to stay here in Bali. So,
Yeah, that's so nice.
yeah, I've sort of lost my desire to travel.
You're comfortable in Bali.
Yeah, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
small world. It's very simple. It's and don't need a vehicle. You know, can walk most places and can swim and swimming is. I never was into swimming like that. I was into like getting wet, but now swimming is the best thing for exercise. I do yoga too. Swimming and yoga and walking becomes more important. I notice as one gets older. So
Nice.
yeah. So do you have any parting words?
Parting words. I don't really, I'm not thinking of words right now. So maybe the words under the words is how to make a living was my life with my guru. I was learning, and then that gave me the theory of how to make a living, and Zen is teaching how to make life, the art of life, the application of that theory. So I guess these two aspects of life are coming together for this person to discover this person's philosophy of life. Because in India, actually, like you were saying, Hinduism, there is actually no text for Hinduism. There was never. I mean, Hindu actually means the people who lived by the river Sindhu. So it's not a religion, you know. It is. There's like so many texts, and like I was telling you earlier, art is connected to architecture, and everything is connected to spiritual living. You know, it's like how the Dharma can be lived, how life can be made meaningful through connecting with the Dharma. So Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. That is kind of the main philosophy. So there's not one text, you know. It's like life itself is the teaching. So it is called Sanatana Dharma, that is eternal Dharma. And so there is no one text, and it's not considered as a religion. It is a science of life which, you know, makes practitioners out of living. And so there is 10,000 gods, one god for every person. You have your philosophy of life. So it's very different. And actually I feel Buddhism is very connecting to the practice in one way, like disciplining and finding your place where you are. It gives that stability of practice through Sangha, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So I feel both Indian philosophy and Buddhism connected together, and the East and the West, you know, coming together is for me, that's a dream. I mean, because that's what I've seen with my teachers. Like my guru's guru had a lot of hippie European people who were with him all the time.
Oh.
Yeah, and then my teacher also had a lot of hippies around him, and he visited the U.S. and at Seattle they have an ashram. His students from Stanford, he taught in Stanford, he taught psychology there, and in several universities, and some of his students became his students forever. So there is still that teaching here, and you know, like the East and the West coming together. I find it's really a great combination that supports a very rich way of looking at life itself. Like the Ayurveda college, for example, I find Ayurveda is so beautifully, you know, given a structure. The structure, the Western way of creating a structure is very skillful.
Mm-hmm.
And Indian wisdom structured through a Western perspective it's very connecting, and also my teachers have made connection with all these great philosophers of the West and all these great teachers. Like if you went to the library in Ooty, I don't know if you visited the library in Fernhill.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see portraits of all these people: Simone de Beauvoir, Jean-Paul Sartre, Aristotle and Socrates, and it's like the whole wall there is filled with portraits of great people of the world.
Yeah.
So they saw this unity of understanding. It's not nothing else. Nobody is separate, and it's not confined to any geographical location.
Yeah, I saw that there, and also in Tiruvannamalai, there was that. On the road where I was, if you keep going down to the end, there's a whole ashram for this great yogi. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yes, Yogi Ram Surat Kumar.
Yeah, and they have a building there. It's round, it's circular, with honoring various great gurus and teachers. And, portraits. All
Is that where Muji goes?
No. I don't know if Muji was there. It was a big place, and they had a giant room for when the teacher came, but mainly there was hardly anybody there. But when there was some teacher there or something, there would be like 1,000 people go there or something, which is in India is no big deal. And
yeah,
maybe more than 1,000. It wasn't like Ramana Ashram had continual activity. Oh, I would like to mention that I really appreciated you getting me in on the private tour of what you call the Samadhi of Ramana Maharshi, the building for his relics. That was really something. I mean, the respect they showed to preserving his legacy went to the extent of keeping fingernail clippings. And
yeah, so there's that too. Like, yeah, sometimes, I think that's why I feel that India also needs a practice place where, like we have here at Zen Center, and my aim is to build a retreat center at Tiruvannamalai. So any from anywhere in the world can come and practice with their team of people or any retreat, like a retreat center. So I've been talking to Paul Disco. Asking him, and he's so graceful. I mean, he's so nice to say that he said he would be willing to support over Zoom, and he said he cannot travel because he's old now and he's retired.
Yeah, he has a little trouble walking.
Yeah, he said he's willing to guide the architects from India over Zoom.
Yeah.
And so, I'm still looking forward to that. And Alan Sanaki from Berkeley Zen Center. Yeah, I've been talking to him about, like raising funds and, putting, GoFundYou or whatever. And he's been very kind to say that, we can collect the funds through his Spring Valley project. So.
Yeah, well, if from what I've seen in the past, if you get an idea and want to do it, you'll do it. And then if you have a center there once a month, You can circumambulate Arunachala.
Yes, and if it's there, you can come and stay whenever you have a home there to
Thank
come
you.
and practice.
But walking around the mountain, there'll be 1 million people, like once a month on a full moon. Is it full moon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There'll be 1 million people come and
moon.
walk around the mountain, and it takes over an hour, right?
Yes, and there is a special festival which is actually today. It's a festival of lights. It's called Deepam, and today is the festival of lights, and in India, in Arunachala, and the mountain. They light a fire on the top of the mountain, and there's millions of people that come for this festival. And and during full moons, there are thousands of people going around the hill circumambulating.
I swear, it's like 1 million.
Yeah, today is like a even more than a full moon day.
Oh wow!
Like
well, then it will be
like packed.
Maybe millions. Oh, and when I said an hour to go around it, I think it was more like 4 hours to go around it.
It takes about 4 hours. Yeah. 4 hours.
That's if you're a fast walker. Yeah. And you and Katrinka and I and Shalkaf maybe. Cool. Yeah. I can't remember who the fourth person was. I think it was Shalkaf. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. We circumambulated it on the inside, like in the park part. And that
yes. That's been stopped now.
That's been stopped? Oh.
Yes, now the inner circumambulation has been stopped because there's been some cases of some young woman getting raped and things like that. So.
Oh, I wouldn't let Katrinka wanted to go walk over there by herself. I said absolutely not. You can't go there by yourself.
Yeah, things like that happen there too. So
you can walk by yourself around here.
Yeah.
They have very low crime rate here. I mean, it's not zero, but Katrinka will walk home by herself in the dark in places, and we don't worry. It's really different. But I want to say when we circumambulated it, we spent 9 hours, incidentally, because we did different things. And but on the first half, going around, clockwise, say the first 2/3 were like in the park, but then we come out into like buildings and like little tiny villages.
Yes.
And then you picked up some yogurt in a store. They had no refrigeration, just in a bag. And we went up, because at that point we went up. You took it to this tiny little temple, and there was a priest there that you knew. And we arrived there. Yes. He just put out mats for us, and we just passed out. Just went to sleep.
Yes, I remember now. As you see.
And then we woke up, and he gave us like tea, and he'd made some food. You'd given him the yogurt. And then Katrinka asked if she could have a spoon to eat her food with, because we were all eating with our hands. And he said yes. And so he gave her a spoon. Oh, I think the tea came after. And he asked her if he could borrow the spoon for the tea. She was through eating. If he could have the spoon back for stirring sugar in the tea, in the milk or whatever. Because that was his only spoon. And you told him that we were from America. And he asked if do you remember what he asked?
What? No, I don't.
He asked if we took the train to get there.
Yeah, he's been living there for a long time, and he lives in the mountains.
Well, okay. Gita, that was great. That was all great. And
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you for this conversation.
Oh, yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to connect with you. It's wonderful to hear everything you have to say. And it's wonderful to hear how engaged you are. That's great. Keep it up.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And,
Thank you so much.
And thanks for all your help to me. And I look forward to continuing to
Yes.
be connected.
You and Katrinka and Clay are always welcome to Tiruvannamalai or wherever, to India. You have a home.
Oh, great. He loved it there. He loved it. He loved it. I tried to get him to stay. Oh, I just want to say one thing. You know who Kaz Tanahashi is? The Indian.
Yes.
I mean, not the Japanese scholar and
Tanahashi.
Artist and all.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, his wife, Linda Hess, I don't know if you know her. She's a...
I know her very well.
You know her, all right. You know, she's a Kabir scholar. And so when I went to India, first Clay was with me. Well, not first, the 2011 trip. We were in Chennai because we joined you for a concert where your son was in the band. It was really good, too. It was a big concert, too. And we spent a little time there, like a week. And then he and I flew to Pune because there was this cultural festival where Linda had made us.
I see. Yes. I remember that.
Special guests. They put us up in a hotel. And that was one. It was all honoring Indian culture and art and film. And we had some great experiences there. And then I left and went back and met Katrinka, and we went to Tiruvannamalai. Well, Linda was with us. She said, "You're going to leave Clay here? He's 19 years old. He doesn't know anything about India. You're leaving him by himself for 4 months?" I said, "Yeah, it'll be good for him." She went, "Oh, Clay, here's my phone number." I think she was living in Varanasi at the time.
Did he live in Varanasi? Did he go to Varanasi?
I did. I had a great experience in Varanasi. That was earlier, 2003. I love it. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could keep going. Better stop.
Yeah. Well, give my love to Katrinka and to Clay.
Yeah.
And wonderful to talk to you.
Wonderful to talk to you.
Usual.
And keep up the good practice. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Bye. Good night.
So thank you very much, Gita Gayatri, Shindo Gita Gayatri, and who's brought the traditions and wisdom of India and the West together in her own practice. This has been a Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC Puba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Doggy Bandita, Feline Kachita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.